Hello and welcome to Pluralsight's IT Ops News and Talk for November 2015. I'm Don Jones, Curriculum Director for IT Ops Content. If you've joined us for the live broadcast, please feel free to submit your questions via chat at any time. I'll do my best to bring those into the conversation. If you're watching this afterwards, consider joining us live on the last Tuesday of each month. And let's begin with a quick look at some of the most notable IT news bits from the past month. As we start to approach the holidays, the news cycle is definitely slowing down. After last month's multi-billion-dollar news of Dell acquiring EMC, experts and analysts are starting to question the real value of the deal. While Dell might certainly desire the VMware subsidiary, Forbes was quick to point out that VMware currently lacks a viable container strategy, putting it at a sudden disadvantage in the next generation of virtualization. Forbes also notes that EMC itself is under significant market pressure. For example, if you haven't looked at SMB3 and storage spaces in Windows and understood how Microsoft is letting you build your own SAN from cheap commodity parts, then you should bring yourself up to date. The pressure is on SAN providers to, well, provide, and it's starting to look like an increasingly tough space. Of course, this deal isn't a done deal, since regulators in the US and potentially abroad still need to approve it. Because the deal is being built around some obscure methods like tracking stock, regulators are already starting to give it the evil eye. Microsoft's 15.11 update to Windows 10 was introduced earlier in November, but the company has unceremoniously yanked it from the Media Creation Tool, or MCT, that was originally the recommended way to get the update if you didn't want to use Windows Update. Microsoft says they've decided not to push updates through the MCT, but instead focus on Windows Update as the only delivery mechanism. You can still get the MCT, but it comes with the 10.586 build, requiring you to still get the 15.11 update from Windows Update. Keep in mind that MCT was never a viable update option for the Enterprise edition of Windows. And now, just a few notable IT Ops courses that I think you should know about. Keep in mind that these are all included with your Pluralsight subscription, and if you don't have one, you can sign up for a free trial at pluralsight.com and check out these new titles. First up is our SharePoint at Work series, currently led by author Bill Coulterman. This series consists of very short courses designed to help SharePoint power users do more with the product. Be sure to recommend these courses to the SharePoint pros and power users in your organization. Next, I wanted to call your attention to the latest course in our professional development series. This one, How to Run Effective Meetings by Stephen Hauntz, joins courses by authors like Jason Alba, Alan Ackman, and more. The series is designed to help you build and grow your career by teaching management, communications, and other soft skills. Finally, here's something you can use to grow the technical side of your career. Philip Polstra's USB Forensics Fundamentals course focuses on USB mass storage devices from a security and forensics perspective. You'll learn the details of how USB works, how Windows behaves with USB devices down to the bus level, and even a bit about USB human interface devices, all from a security angle. Now, before we bring in our guest this month, let's take a quick moment for a security alert. First up, and so fresh I didn't even have a slide for it because it just happened yesterday, is the news that some Dell laptops, including popular models like XPS 13, the XPS 15, and the Inspiron 5000, all have a pre-installed root certificate that includes the encryption key in local storage. Assume that some bad actor has already created certs from that root, which your laptops are going to trust, and is using them to create SSL connections, potentially even sign code. Revoke that Dell root certificate stat on those computers. Ars Technica has a great write-up on the serious vulnerabilities in the Ubiquitous Network Time Protocol, or NTP. These weaknesses are extremely serious, opening you up to potential data leaks, outages, hacked encryption, and more. It really all boils down to the fact that many of these protocols are decades old and simply weren't built with the level of paranoia required in a modern Internet environment. And we're not just talking about obscure possibilities either. Literally breaking HTTPS, hacking the security on DNSSEC, these are extremely realistic and extremely worrying scenarios, all made possible by taking a computer's clock out of sync. Practical possibilities include man-in-the-middle attacks, including so-called off-path attacks, where the hacker might not even need to directly monitor traffic passing between a computer and its NTP server. Scary stuff, and worth a few minutes of your time to read up on. And now, let's bring on this month's guest. Rhonda Layfield-Dwyer is a Pluralsight author well known for her courses on Windows client deployment, deployment toolkits, and more. She's been teaching this stuff for years, and she's one of the most knowledgeable people in the field. Rhonda, welcome to the show.
Hi, Don. Thanks for having me.
Well, look, since you're so connected to deployment techniques and issues, I wanted to talk a little bit about Windows 10's various branches. I know a lot of people are just kind of getting started with Windows 10 in their environments, and they've got some choices to make. This is kind of a first for most Windows people, where we've basically got different versions of Windows that each get updated on a different schedule. There's long-term servicing branch, there's current branch, which seems to be broken into fast ring and slow ring. What's Microsoft trying to accomplish here, do you think?
I think they're trying to come up with better ways to secure their operating system. I think that as soon as they find out there's an exploit somewhere, they want to make sure they get that covered and get it out to the masses as quickly as possible. That's one issue I think they're trying to attack. Also, when it comes to upgrading your operating system, there is an awful lot of work that goes into deploying new OSs. Just from, gosh, testing alone into getting things into production can be months, years sometimes for organizations. This is a huge undertaking to upgrade your operating system. So what they're planning here is to have little incremental upgrades to the OS so we no longer have to go through the great big Windows XP to Windows 7 type of deployments. I think that's where they're headed.
So I know people have talked about this in the news where Windows 10 might be the last version of Windows, and from here on out we'll pay a subscription and everything will just come down through Windows Update. I mean, you have a lot of customers that you do deployment with. Is that something that the market, that the customers are ready for? What's kind of the reaction in the field to that concept?
They are frightened. They are trepidatious. Yeah, Microsoft does have a history, of updates that have downed machines. They have quickly responded to issues. And we have to take into account that we're talking about a lot of computers worldwide and how Microsoft is trying as best they can to keep things secure. But it's still, without being tested, can wreak havoc in your environments just to get updates from Microsoft whenever, no longer on a specific date, so you know that any issues that happened after Patch Tuesday, maybe you come in Wednesday morning and you've got some machines that are down or an application that no longer works properly, then you can kind of pinpoint, oh, well, that was definitely an update. But now if we're going to be having updates coming out whenever they're available and you cannot decide not to get them, you could possibly defer them depending on the branch that you're in. You could defer them to be installed at a later time. But ultimately, you will have to take the security updates and the upgrades as they come. So I think a lot of people are really afraid from looking at the past and seeing what's happened. And moving forward, they're hoping that Microsoft's testing abilities are going to be a little better than they have been in the past. But how can they know every application and every combination of applications that are out in the field? There's just no way for Microsoft to have a magic crystal ball sitting there saying, okay, is this update going to down any machines? Is it going to cause any issues with applications? So I think most clients are really sitting back saying, yeah, you're kind of taking all the control for these updates away from us. So now they're kind of afraid that there might be some havoc in their environments, and that's just based on past performance and past history with Microsoft.
So what are people thinking is the right branch or ring for a business to have for their client computers? And is there room for businesses to have some computers on both?
Right. Well, the current branch is for home users only, so that really only leaves CBB, the current branch for business, and the LTSB, long-term servicing branch. So LTSB is available for volume licensed customers. And if you're not a volume licensed customer, then you're going to be using CBB. So really it comes down to the addition. That's kind of a subtle thing that I didn't really think I had wrapped my head around. So if you're a small to medium-sized business who doesn't have 5,000 seats or whatever the entry point is for volume licensing, you're basically going to take the updates as they happen and thank you and just deal with it. Right. Now they can still
That's
be
scary.
deferred. There are some in CBP that can be deferred. In fact, for CBB, you can actually defer for a few weeks, whereas when you get into LTSB, you could defer up to 8 months for an OS upgrade and updates, your critical and security updates. You can defer those for up to 4 weeks. Of course, this is not one fell swoop. The OS upgrades would be a maximum deferral of 8 months, but you'd have to go in each month. You can only defer for 1 month at a time, but you can do it 8 times. And then for the updates, you could defer for 4 weeks, but you have to do it each week. So eventually, you will have to take the updates, which can be very frightening based on past performance.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we're almost, first of all, update maintenance is now going to be a daily to weekly job. You're at least going to have someone going in and deferring things. And then I mean, we're looking at a world where we don't have a 3-year milestone on the clients anymore. We're looking at a world where at least once every month to 6 months or something like that, we're going to have rolling upgrade windows or upgrade windows of some kind. This is really a huge change in how people manage their client base. You almost don't have a choice. I realize that a lot of people are probably thinking, how can I possibly work around this? But I mean, until Microsoft gets people using this and decides to do a course correction, this is what we have. So is this just a matter of accepting the inevitability of fate and changing the way you do client management?
That's the way I see it. I don't see that they have any other choice. Microsoft isn't really giving them choices. But then on the flip side of that coin, when you're talking about critical security updates, you kind of think, well, I don't want a choice. If Microsoft knows there's an exploit out there, I want the fix immediately. But people don't then take it one step further and say, well, sometimes security updates can break things. I've had them personally break a number of things. So I think that you've got both sides of that coin to deal with, actually.
So I know one of the things in the deployment world is you maintain a serviceable image for your OS deployments, meaning as patches come in and you approve them for your environment, you apply those to your OS deployment image as well, so that new machines are born with all the latest updates, or at least most of the latest updates. Is there a chance that if a business is maintaining kind of some of both branch, that you're going to have multiple images that you're applying service pack, updates, service packs, everything to?
Well, I'm not so sure that we're talking about multiple images as much as we're talking about updating the images. So when you talk about multiple images, yeah, I think of multiple images. I need an image for 32-bit OSs and I need 64-bit. So there I've got 2 different images. But when it comes to your security updates, those security updates need to be in every single 32-bit image and in every single 64-bit image. So what I'm imagining is that people are going to have to update their images more often. And it'll be solely based upon when does a great big, this will blow everything up in your environment security update, that needs to be rolled into your existing image. So I don't know so much that you need to have multiple images as you do need to update the image you're deploying more often than you have been. And some people do create brand new images. In fact, I highly recommend doing brand new images because the way I do it is I use MDT. If you have Configuration Manager, you can do that as well, but I don't like to build images in Configuration Manager. There's too much stuff that Config Manager puts in there that you do not want. So back to the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, you can have your task sequence set up that actually builds everything for you automatically. All you have to do is kick it off, and you can kick it off by simply booting a machine up and walking away. You can have it automated to that point. You come back 2.5 hours later, you have a brand new image. It might be shorter period depending on networking and things like that, but usually you're installing a lot of applications and you're doing a lot of tweaking on that master image. So I think fundamentally we're not really going to be addressing the issue of having multiple images as we are keeping the images that we have current with these updates is going to be a lot more of a full-time job. It's not just, oh, we deployed everything and now we're done so we don't have to do that for the next 10 years. It's going to be an ongoing.
Yeah.
Because for troubleshooting purposes today, rebuilding a machine is a snap. Most people don't troubleshoot client-side machines any longer. You just do a reinstallation, wipe it clean, 20, 30 minutes later you got a brand new install, the machine's acting right, everything's fine, you're good. So a lot more work on maintaining the images that you already have, I think.
Yeah, I could see even a small business really potentially having to dedicate resources that they never have before. You almost start to wonder if there's not going to be a little side business from a lot of these managed service providers to just sell you people to do image maintenance or even it's definitely a level of work that a lot of businesses have never had to do before. And it's kind of scary because you've got all these updates streaming down to you. You certainly want to spend a little bit of time testing the your environment, and that just adds more resources to it. What do you think is a way for IT pros to start kind of wrapping their heads around this now? Are there, I know you've got some training in the Pluralsight library, or resources that you've found and your heads around it. So my thing is that I think that even if this approach turns out to be wrong, we won't know until a lot of people actually put it on the ground and try it, and then Microsoft can take feedback and course correct. It's like sooner people start trying things that almost let's break it so they can fix it. Where will we reach someone so they can start kind of wrapping their heads around this and getting a feel for how much work it's going to be?
Well, if this were my job, and I didn't know how to do images, I didn't know how to update them, the first thing I would start doing is looking at the tools. Look at the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. Windows Deployment Service, WDS, not the tool for this at all. In fact, I have never, ever in any environment recommended WDS by itself as a deployment tool. So I would highly recommend that people take a look at how their patching is currently being done. With MDT, you can open up that custom settings INI and you can put in your WSUS server right there. So what's cool about that is you've already got all your updates and everything approved on the WSUS server. You just got in 15 new ones. Okay, you've approved those. Your existing image doesn't have those new 15 updates. So what you'd want to do is have it go in, rebuild an image for you automatically, and if you have the custom settings INI pointing to your internal WSUS server with the approved updates on it, that new image will contain the new updates. And it really isn't that difficult to do. It would take maybe a day. If you had 8 hours to sit down and set this up, you would be an MDT expert at the end of the day because it's just not that difficult of a product to learn. And any tips and tricks that you need to know about it, you would find on my Pluralsight videos. I've done tons of work with MDT over the years and with Windows 10 as well. But I think those people really need to start diving into how do we do our updates right now, and if the model is going to change on how we get them and when they're installed, and the fact that we may not have any option to not install them, you need to start looking at the tools, how you can automate it, and to keep your environment secure, you need to figure out the best way to integrate the tools together with your existing patch deployment solution. So that's what I would be doing right now, is I would be looking at, okay, this is going to change, so now I need to take a look at how do we currently do this? Will that work? Will we have to do it more often? If we do have to do it more often, if it takes like 8 hours right now to build something, why don't we find another tool that doesn't take as long to build something? So now would be the perfect time to pick the correct tool for your environment that will help you move forward. I wouldn't wait until they start doing it and then you end up with this huge mess on your hands, machines that have been downed because you didn't test the security patches before they got blown out there. So I think this is the perfect time to learn the tools, learn the different ways that you can get these updates out to your clients or to your existing images. That's where I'd be spending my time right now.
And I definitely get the impression that there's a lot of folks that have just kind of ignored the Microsoft deployment toolkit because they've had methods that they've used for a long time that they're comfortable with. But it sounds like this is really a good time to just throw everything in the trash conceptually and start at the beginning, figure out what the right tools for the job. The job is definitely changing. Do you see more people taking an interest in MDT, given that we're kind of shifting over to this more agile model?
And I couldn't actually understand that question. Can you ask it again? It was kind of breaking up a bit.
Yeah, I said, do you see more people kind of shifting over to the Microsoft deployment toolkit now that we're getting more of an agile deployment model kind of being forced on us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think people who know about MDT, they already use it because they know how fantastic it is. It's a fantastic tool, especially for the price since it's free. But yes, I do see a lot of people who have been moving into MDT. I still think there's a lot of people who aren't aware of it. They don't even know that it exists. So I hope they learn quickly because it sure does make your life a lot easier when you're generating images. Configuration manager, I mean, there's a lot you can do with that, but there you're talking about, very, very large organizations. And it's rather frightening to me to right-click on an image and say, update the patches. Because they're doing everything offline. I don't know what's happening. And then, of course, you have to go test that image immediately before you can blast it out to anyone. So Configuration Manager makes it even easier, but then not everybody has that. So that's why I always bring up MDT. Anybody can grab that, just a free download. But yeah, it will make it a lot easier. And you could actually set it to generate a new image, boot a machine, walk out, go to lunch, and by the time you come back from lunch, most organizations, you would have a brand new image sitting there waiting to be tested. So it's not time consuming for the technician to create an image. Everybody always acts like, oh my gosh, I have to create a new image. And it's like, you know what, that's about 30 seconds of your time. That's all it is. Go in and yeah, it's you just start it up and it'll do all the work for you as long as you have it set up properly. You got that WSUS setting in your custom settings INI, walk away and it'll just do everything for you. So I think people should learn the tools and make sure they've got the right tool for the job before everything starts changing.
So, thanks. It sounds like great advice. Thanks for bringing it up, and thanks for joining me here.
Well, thank you for having me.
This month, I'd like to close with a deep look at a technology you probably use all the time, but may not know much about. Dynamic memory is a highly marketed feature of both vSphere and Hyper-V, allowing you to assign more memory to the virtual machines on a host than that host actually contains. It's also referred to as memory overcommit, which is a very accurate description for what you're really doing. But how does this thing work its magic under the hood? Before dynamic memory was a thing, every byte of virtual memory assigned to virtual machines had to be backed up by the same amount of physical memory. This was a one-to-one mapping. It's because the physical processor in the host has to manipulate data someplace, and memory is that place. The problem is that the host can't see inside the VM to see what memory is actually being used, and so it had to assume all the memory was being used. Dynamic memory relies on the fact that, in operating systems like Windows and Linux, memory is actually divided into two spaces. User mode is where the applications run, and kernel mode is where critical system drivers and services run. The trick with kernel mode is that the OS makes an important assumption. Anything running in kernel mode is absolutely required in order for the machine to run. So when something in kernel mode asks for memory, it simply has to have it, even if that means making less memory available to user mode. So dynamic memory takes the form of a kernel mode device driver like a video driver or network driver. The host hypervisor is able to communicate with this driver and tell the driver when it wants the virtual machine to use less physical memory. When that happens, that so-called balloon driver running in kernel mode asks for memory from the guest operating system. The OS is obligated to provide that memory and reduces the available amount of user mode memory to do so. Once the balloon driver has the memory it wants, it writes zeros into that memory space. Now the balloon driver knows what memory it has assigned, and it knows that the memory isn't actually in use. That means it's safe for the hypervisor to no longer map that virtual memory to physical memory, freeing up the physical memory to be mapped elsewhere. It's a pretty neat trick, and now you know how it's done. Once again, thank you for joining us, and I hope I'll see you live on the last Tuesday of next month at noon Pacific. Until then, please feel free to reach us on Twitter, and have a great day.